Welcome to episode 8 of The Witching Hour. Woo. I am Perri Nemiroff, and I am beyond thrilled to be back in the office with my co-host. It's Haleigh Fouch.
Hi, Perri. Happy to have you back.
Oh my God, I'm so happy to be back. In case you guys didn't see any of the TIFF coverage, I've been in Toronto covering the festival for, I guess, almost a full 2 weeks, a week and a half, and it was exhausting / wonderful, and every single minute of sleep I lost while I was there was well worth it.
That's how film festivals are, right?
Yeah. You're gearing up for a run like that, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. Fantastic Fest. Here I come.
I am so excited for you to see Halloween.
I can't wait.
I think that I should probably have mentioned this to you off air before I commit to it, but I think that obviously we're going to talk about Halloween a lot leading up to the release. But, you know, a full spoiler review episode is not a bad idea.
I'm into it.
I got so many details that they just want to like come oozing out right now,
Zip
but
it up,
I'm
lady.
keeping it together. As I said before, this is episode 8 of The Witching Hour, and it just so happens that today we're going to talk about season 8 of American Horror Story. It is American Horror Story Apocalypse. But before we get into those specifics, I think we should recap our feelings on American Horror Story overall and maybe kind of use a ranking of the seasons or a light ranking to figure it out a little bit. What's the favorite and least favorite for you?
Yeah. So like overall, I think I share a lot of the same feelings that a lot of people do, which is I get really excited every year. I'm so into it. Every year it disappoints me, but I never learn. And I've realized through Twitter and, you know, the internet that so many of us feel this way. Like everyone, you get into it and then you just sort of either stop watching or you stick around and get angry. But
I've had my fair share of that kind of experience with the show.
Yeah. My favorite is definitely Murder House, which I just revisited right before this new one started because, you know, it's supposed to be connected and my gosh, that was so many years ago now. I had forgotten so many details. Mm-hmm. And I found that it held up so well and had, there's just a different feeling to early American Horror Story where it feels like they were still trying for cohesive narrative, where it feels like they definitely don't care as much anymore. They're just like, look at what we're doing now. And here's another crazy thing. And look at this fashion. And like, I enjoy that to an extent.
The fashion has lost its charm for me a little.
Yeah.
You know me well enough. It's jeans and T-shirts for me, and I don't really appreciate high fashion in the real world or on screen also. And it just, you know, with every single season, and we'll get into it, but in particular this one, I had a little bit of an issue with the high fashion featured in episode 1.
Same. We will get into that. Least favorite? It's hard because there's a lot that I really kind of broke my heart, but I think like Hotel might be the worst for me and Coven might be the most heartbreaking because it starts so strong and then I think really falls apart.
Yeah. I'll definitely repeat what you just said and say that Murder House is my favorite because, cohesive story, a focused story, and also it seems like with each and every season, we forego some of the horror for the flashy, heightened nonsense. And I don't really appreciate that because I got into this from the very beginning because I wanted to be scared. And especially, you know, the first episode of Murder House, when I saw that, and especially when I saw the opening title sequence too, it chilled me. It chilled me to my core and I loved it. And then as we kind of continued on, I would always get hyped each and every season. And then it would wind up losing its footing, typically towards the middle of the season, I guess. But I'm also not the biggest fan of Asylum. I like individual pieces of Asylum, but Asylum never worked for me as a full season. Yeah. And I know a lot of people think
I really
that's
like
the best.
Asylum. I don't think it's the best, but I think it would be like my number 2 probably.
I think I do like Coven a little more than you do, though. That might be... That might be my number 2 if I had to pick one. And as for my least favorite, I think the one that most offensively in my mind veers off course was Freak Show, season 4. I'll give you a spoiler warning for Freak Show right now. I covered the crap out of that show. I mean, to the point, because I think I was doing both video recaps and also written recaps at the time for Collider.com, and I just went down that rabbit hole of theories and deep explorations of each of the character every single week, to the point that, you know, they don't like to give us advanced screeners. So you're watching it live, it wraps up at 11 p.m., and then you're basically sitting there for hours on end, writing, researching, rewatching, finally publishing. And I put so much time and effort into that because I really cared. And then at the end of the season, all these characters you've come to care about and explore are just obliterated in a hot second. And that hurt. That really hurt.
I remember, like, you're not an angry person, and I actually remember how angry you were at the end of that season.
I was very, very upset. The one that I appreciate that I think doesn't get a lot of love is Roanoke. But I think Roanoke works really well as two separate seasons. The two pieces don't go together at all, but especially the beginning portion where it was... you know, the reality show vibe, I was really liking that. And obviously it has a major shift in the middle, and I don't think the two things blend into each other.
That's your wild
all,
card.
Yeah.
I don't care for Roanoke either portion, really. And I disliked the first half a lot. That was one that I had stopped watching, actually. And a lot of people were like, oh, you've got to see it after episode 6, though. Everything changes and it's amazing. And then I had this high expectation in my head, and I went back and started it up again, and I took the time to catch up on the episodes and finally got to episode 6, and I was like, well, shit, I hate this too.
I wish I had some time to go back and rewatch. I always mean to, and then, then the thought of it, and then also all the other stuff we're watching and doing. I'm like, well... Forget that. I mean, at this point, I still have to finish Castle Rock, and it's killing me that I haven't had time to do that yet.
Murder House really made me want to rewatch more, but there's just no time. There's too many. My wild card, real quick, is Cult, which is one that I know a lot of people really hate, but I think is fascinating.
I really liked Cult. I liked Cult a lot. The only thing that never really worked for me with Cult is when they started to tap into some of the true stories. Yeah. I see how those true stories served the overall themes of Cult, but just the way they were incorporated into the season, it almost felt like they were standalone episodes that never really contributed to the greater story there.
I agree with that totally, and I think they were distractions more than anything, and ultimately, like, we talked about this a little bit, I think, but, like, what is tasteful and what is not when it comes to a real-life horror. And, like, I found a lot of what they, like, the Sharon Tate murder, I was like, that is distasteful.
Yeah. It's the risk a show like this runs quite a bit, whether you're talking about real violence or that, or even stuff that's completely made up, because this show has a habit of taking a major leap in what can be very off-putting directions.
Oh, yes. Even rewatching Murder House, spoiler alert, for a, like, 8-year-old show, I guess. But
God, 8 years.
I don't think that's really the. I just pulled that number. When was it? It was 7 years, so not far.
All right, that's still enough to make it feel ancient to me and scare the crap out of me right now.
Yeah, me too. But the part where, like, Tate's a full-on rapist, I was like, oh, I don't think they could do that now in 2018 and still be like, but he's a sympathetic bad guy.
Yeah, that does not really fly. I mean, even his school shooting episode is that's actually one of the very few ones that I've revisited. Mortifying.
Really hard to watch.
Very hard to watch. I do think that was well done, though, for the show.
I agree.
I think that's probably one of the best episodes of the entire series, actually.
I agree as well.
All right. Now we should probably get into Apocalypse, because, boy, do I have thoughts on this one. We're going to kick off this conversation spoiler-free and just give you our general thoughts on the premiere episode of the season, just so if you have not watched it or if you're wondering if you should get into it, you are in the safe zone right now. We will give you a very clear spoiler warning when you should turn it off, though. So right now, spoiler-free thoughts on Episode 1, titled The End of American Horror Story Apocalypse. So the thing kicks off with a bunch of characters in modern-day LA, and the sirens go off, the alarms go off, and I don't mean like the alarm on your cell phone to wake up in the morning. And meanwhile, this is a very scary real thing. Have you ever had that emergency siren go off? That is mortifying.
Yeah,
I feel like that shouldn't be allowed. So that in New York, I think it went off once for an Amber Alert.
That's when I get them.
And it gave me, like, my heart skipped a major beat, and I got really scared because, I don't know, God forbid I were driving or something and that caught me off guard.
Right.
Maybe it would do more bad than good. And
I don't know, but if it is an incoming missile, wouldn't you want to know?
That's a very fair point. So
maybe not for Amber Alerts. I know they're very important.
Yeah,
but
they
like
are.
your point about driving is very true.
Yeah. I mean, driving, or I don't even know, like walking the street. I'm just thinking about any kind of scenario where hearing that could give me, like, could
in the middle of heart surgery.
But yeah, if there was an incoming missile, I would want to know. And in this case, the characters find out, and basically we're with two sets of characters here, and they're making a mad dash for safety. And then the episode takes a very sharp, very American Horror Story turn into the underground bunker that's more like a Gothic period piece style underground castle. Even, can I call it a castle if it's underground? An underground castle. But yeah, my light response to all of that was, I'm very into disaster movies, and in particular, I tend to like the first act the best, when you have that kind of slow build to what's coming, or them first figuring out how to escape or how to navigate what's happening.
Right.
And I think it works really, really well here. I just wish they had spent a little more time in that phase before opening the door to this really out of this world scenario that, yeah, I'm sure they're going to explain it away why it's like that at some point, but for this one specific episode of television, that shift was way too abrupt for me. And, you know, to simplify my reaction to that location, I don't really know if I liked it all that much.
Yeah. No, I agree with all of that. I think it's not like, so I talk about how you always get really into American Horror Story, and the first episode you're like, fuck yeah. But this episode, I was already at the mid-season point where I'm like, that's not it. Like, there was stuff I liked about it, but my review headline on the website, I think, was a mixed bag of meh. Like, there's stuff in there that's...
It's definitely a mixed bag.
Yeah. And most of it, I'm sort of like, that kind of works, I guess.
Yeah.
There are things I love, like who knew Kathy Bates worked black lipstick like that?
Her look is absolutely killer on this show.
Feeling that a lot. There are things that really don't work for me. Like, primarily, I don't like any of these characters, and I don't care what happens to them.
Yeah.
None. And I know we're going to see older characters come back, so I'm hoping that helps that problem.
Oh, I got theories all day for that.
We're not there
all
yet.
Day.
We're spoiler-free right now.
Yes, we are.
But they're all kind of insufferable, and that's part of, like, picking up in modern-day Los Angeles, or I wouldn't call it modern day. It felt like Los Angeles 5 years ago to me, like, juice craze.
Like, juice craze. I want to be a social media
star. Has anybody had this haircut before? And it's like literally the most popular haircut for the last 3 years. A lob? Come on. But it's, there's
a lob. It doesn't matter how many times I hear it. I'm like, really? Did we have to call it a freaking lob?
Hey, it's a long bob. It works. So Perri doesn't care about fashion. I kind of do. So you'll hear things like lob and Kathy Bates black lipstick. Yeah, don't love it. Don't hate it. Don't love it.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna steal your word and say mixed on the whole thing, because, you know, American Horror Story has dug its claws into me very, very deep, to the point that every single time I get jerked around, I've never learned my lesson, and I don't think I ever will.
I don't think so.
It's something about this insatiable curiosity that's always going to be there and is always going to drive me forward to the next episode. So while I will echo the fact that I can't say I really like very many of the characters, I am not rooting for very many of them. And actually, this is what I think could have helped a lot. I think it would have been a stronger episode had they opened on Timmy and spent more time with him and used him as that straight man to bring us. I know you eventually would have had to backtrack to show what happened to Coco and all of them in order to get them into the facility, or actually would you have? Whatever, that doesn't matter. But the point is, I think Timmy is a strong anchor, and I think he would have served the overall episode much better had he been used more to actually walk you into Outpost 3.
I agree with that, and the episode needed more of him because as he is right now, or maybe it's better said that his character needed more time in the episode. He's just like this vanilla nothing. I don't know nothing or anything about him. He's super boring, and like all I know is he likes a hot girl, and it's like, yeah, don't we all? Like, who cares?
Yeah, but you know, I mean, it does look like things are going to get a little more complicated for the two of them going forward in true AHS fashion. All right. So there you guys go. I mean, I think the word of our non-spoiler review is probably meh and mixed.
Meh and mixed.
So good headline for you, Haleigh.
Thank you. I mean, it's just like, I get it. It starts with this great bang, and it's fun. And I do think it has a really fun sense of humor this season.
Okay.
That I'm leaning into. I don't want to say my favorite line because we're not spoiler yet.
I know exactly.
Of course
what you're
you
getting
do.
At.
It's so goofy, but it's too much of a bang almost. It was like it left them with no structure.
Yeah.
And I don't know what there's nothing besides the inciting incident. It's all plot, no story.
That is exactly what I said.
Really?
That's all it is. It is the inciting incident, and really nothing else happens. It's an episode that's essentially just setting the scene for you, and then hopefully they'll run with it after. But as far as a premiere episode goes, obviously you have to set the scene for a new place, a new bunch of characters and all of that. But there needs to be another like plot-heavy hook to make you feel invested and give you a little more to chew on for what is to come versus just like a smattering of all these crazy things where you don't know any which direction they could take it in.
Yeah, I think so. We're about to move into spoilers. So I think they give that to you in the very last 2 minutes of the episode.
Exactly. Yep.
Spoiler time.
Here we go. Your one and only spoiler alert. It is happening now. Please tune out if you care about spoilers and you don't want to know any for episode 1, the end of American Horror Story Apocalypse. Here we go. I feel like even though this is so out of order, I have to do it first. That line that you were referring to, go for it.
Stew is the stew.
So I knew it was coming, like a step ahead. I knew they were going to say it. And leading up to it, I'm like, no, they're not going to do it. And then they say it.
It's so delightfully stupid. And I love it.
It really is. The stew joke is stupid.
Yes. Stew's all around. But you know, I like that kind of stupid. And I feel like if American Horror Story is just full schlock these days, then stupid humor will help me get through the schlock.
Yeah. I mean, that... schlock might be the best way to describe the second half. So, like I said in the spoiler-free discussion, I was very into the first half. Very, very into it. Then when we get underground and we start to... I guess one of the things I had the biggest problem with is, if anyone was ever in this kind of situation, every other disaster-type movie that involves an underground bunker that I've been exposed to, you expect it to be, an underground bunker with harsh office lighting almost, emergency lighting maybe, filled with military personnel and canned goods and everything. But they go into it and it's like candle lit and... almost like a regal quality to it. And I think I would have been a little more lenient with the setting if they didn't also have that obnoxious fashion. And yes, Kathy Bates looks cooler than anybody else on this show. And yeah, it might make a pretty picture because American Horror Story loves releasing those profile stills, highlighting all the characters. And it looks beautiful there.
Always at some interesting angle.
But really, I mean... there has to be some logical sense with surviving a nuclear attack. I don't care who's operating this whole underground facility, the collective and what they're up to, whatever witchy shit they've got going on or not. What sense does it make to have them dressed like that?
Yeah, I wonder No, it's not. At a certain point, I was thinking, is this just the doing of the two women? Because clearly they're just doing shit that entertains them. But then Michael Langdon shows up and he's wearing that same goofy ass stuff. So I think, I don't know. We'll have to see if I hope there's a reason that they decided to be like, our look for the apocalypse is going to be like goth, kink, fancy, colonial. But for right now, it doesn't really make sense.
See, this also leads us into theory territory, too. Yeah. I guess it's really impossible to separate a spoiler review and theories at this point, because I'm thinking of a million different things. So we know that there's more than one outpost. This is Outpost 3. I believe they said there were 10. Was it 10 and 6 were taken down or something, attacked?
I cannot confirm or deny
something like
at
that.
This time.
So what just crossed my mind as you were describing the fashion is like, what if each outpost had a different kind of fashion, and it's like whichever one survived, that's the fashion that took over the world.
That would be interesting if they were all trying to build different cultures inside the different outposts. I don't think they're going to do that, but
yeah, neither do
I. Yeah, so also, just to be like a little bit catty about it, don't think it's cute. Like, as far as the fashion goes, a lot of times I've watched the show and been like, lame season, but love the looks.
Yeah.
Not this year.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know I don't care about high fashion. I think the only one that I was like, you look awesome is pretty much just Kathy Bates.
And
that's
a part
it.
of that I wonder is how much, like, I never thought I would see Kathy Bates dressed that way.
Yeah.
And she rules it so hard.
And when you go through her range of looks over the course of all of her work on American Horror Story, God, she just knocks it out of the park time and time again.
I mean, what a lucky thing for audiences that Ryan Murphy loves these powerhouse older female actresses who don't get to work as much as they used to.
And she is just absolutely exceptional. I mean, really, when you look at the entire recurring cast, I'm kind of thankful that they wound up sticking with the same faces in different scenarios with this anthology format, because time and time again, Kathy Bates, Sarah Paulson, Evan Peters, now Adina Porter too.
Yeah, I love her.
I'm glad she's back also. They just crush it. I mean, even Leslie Grossman, even though she didn't have the biggest role in the end last season, she was really great.
Yeah, he's been doing the Lord's work with the people. He's been sort of Quentin Tarantinoing the careers of older female actresses. I mean, like Jessica Lange was almost disappeared from the industry before this came, and now she's a big thing again. Obviously Sarah Paulson. I mean, we don't even talk about that anymore. She's like been the lead of everything since season 2.
She's incredible.
But Angela Bassett, yes, please
give me more of this.
More.
I think I probably walked away from this episode not to tap into the Michael Langdon stuff yet, because I think that's the one that opens up the biggest door. But before we even get there, it's the dynamic between Sarah Paulson's character and Kathy Bates' character that I think I was getting into the most, because they're the ones that kind of give us the basic information on the culture there, with the grays versus the purples, them wanting to be purples, them being in charge though, and just this idea of them kind of not aligning with how the collective operates, and basically taking pleasure in torturing their guests there. And I'm kind of just very curious, and I hope we do wind up in a position where we get a little backstory with how were they recruited by the collective, what made them kind of switch gears a little and think about themselves more than whatever greater good the collective is fighting for, and what are they going to do from here on out? I mean, the whole point of an underground bunker is to save the people in it. Are they just going to pick them off one by one until we end up with whatever the collective or they deem as the best crop of people?
I mean, now that like Michael Langdon came in and said that he's now passing judgment, it does seem that we're going to whittle down the cast a bit more before we reach the second destination. What I found unfortunate was I waited so long in the episode for people to be interested in. Then they had their scene, which I thought, frankly, was a little ham-fisted with the dialogue. Like,
you mean the one-on-one conversation?
Yeah, or they're like, it gives me a tingle. But, like, it just was really, really, like, if they had mustaches, they would have been twirling both sides and maybe each other's, you know? Like,
Probably an instance where the names Sarah Paulson and Kathy Bates and just what American Horror Story always is, that just suits that so well that I think I immediately give something like that a pass.
I did not, because it distracted me. I'm fine with it if I find it amusing, but I was like, oh, I get it. They're bad girls. I get it. But what really frustrated me was that was the first thing that I was like, hey, that's interesting and kind of twisted and different. And then they were like, fast forward 18 months. I was like, well, then you just undercut that whole dynamic you set up.
I haven't rewatched the episode, but is it right to say that nobody looks any different after 18 months except Leslie Grossman?
I kind of think
Was that the thing?
so. Like, her hair obviously has gone to hell.
Why has her hair gone to hell and nobody
I don't
else
know. Did
has?
he lose
Especially
his talent?
with Evan Peters as Mr. Gallant right there. Couldn't he just fix it for her?
Well, maybe he's like, I'm a purple. I don't do your hair anymore.
I guess so. I guess that they're on the same playing field now. And poor Billie Lourd, she's not.
Is she the one gray?
She's the only gray that came from the people who survived.
But we haven't even seen another one, right? Forget about from the people who survived. Like,
That's actually a really good point, because I don't remember seeing anyone. Because most of the other ones are dressed like Sarah Paulson and Kathy Bates. By the way, that Wilhelmina Venable, like
really
I
good.
could just say it over and over and over again. I wonder who came up with that, and then they said to themselves, "That rolls off the tongue. I want to say it over and over, so we're going to name her that."
Our actors are gonna love this.
That would make a whole lot of sense to me. Going into the whole Timmy thing now. So, Timmy is super blah, and they tease some interesting things for him that I'm a little curious about. But ultimately, and also just in case you don't know this, if this is your first American Horror Story season or whatnot, Cody Fern as Michael Langdon. Michael Langdon is the baby that Connie Britton's character and Evan Peters' character, Tate and Vivian Harmon from season 1, Murder House. They got together, had a baby. This baby is presumably the Antichrist, and that is Michael Langdon.
I would clarify two things.
Okay.
I wouldn't say got together, 100% rape.
No, that is how it went down.
Super rape. And also, he was a ghost. So, like, there was this thing in the first scene where it's like foretold that the child of a ghost and a human will be the end of the world. And so Tate was a ghost, Harmon lady was a lady, and they had a Satan baby.
Yep.
And now he's all grown up and beautiful and very Versace.
He also looks very very Twilight to me.
Oh, that's funny.
He legit looks like he could be like what was the Twilight, the governing vampires called?
Oh,
with like
right,
Dakota
right.
Fanning and all
I
that.
don't remember, but
he
totally.
looks like he could have been in that group.
See, to me, he looks like he fell out of Anne Rice's world.
That Interview with the Vampire for sure there too.
But we both thought vampire, which is interesting.
I know. It is kind of interesting. I mean, hey, with American Horror Story, you never know. That could come into play.
That makes me want to ask one of my theory things.
Let's hear it.
It sounds like maybe this might be a zombie type scenario where there's maybe not zombies exclusively, but some sort of human that is no longer human roaming upstairs.
I suspect that might be the case because I think the term someone used at some point was like pus monster or something.
Yeah, something
and that to me
like that.
screams zombie. And also we know some of the other outposts were attacked. And I imagine that might be by, however the humans above ground were transformed by nuclear winter.
And we saw, I need to rewatch the episode because we saw the people charging the plane as they were getting on. Did we see what condition those people were in?
That was another thing, is I believe a lot of his shots were headshots. And then don't they go to kind of eat him?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So maybe zombie does have a quality here.
And Coven did have the zombies in it.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's a tie-in there.
Yeah. So my theory when Michael Langdon stepped in is, at first I was kind of taking it for what they said, and someone mentions World War III. So that was one thing, and I was still, asking who would have shot off the missiles at that point too, but even more so when he walks in, because when he walks in, I kind of push aside the idea of a traditional, as we might think it would play out, World War III, and now I'm thinking that it's actually him and the collective's doing, and they've done this to kind of reshape the world into basically hell on earth.
Yeah, I think that's probably. I had the same
Probably
thought.
what's happening
yeah.
here.
I mean, maybe not, but it seems like my instinct is that the tie-in from Murder House and Coven and, you know, Kathy Bates being like, "Hail Satan," is this is an intentional apocalypse. That by these characters, probably at least with some of them from the past playing a role in helping it happen.
I think that's the case. I mean, there, just to play both sides here a little bit, I guess there is a chance that World War III did happen, like one might expect it to, and then they just kind of, used that opportunity for their benefit. It's like they've had these outposts built for however long, and when somebody else just kicked it off, they kind of ran with it.
It's a question of, we're getting into like Westworld territory, like was there free will or was it preordained?
But the thing is, that is like the entirety of this episode. That's what happens when you have an episode that is entirely set up, and especially extremely heightened setup like this, is you're left with nothing meaningful to really hold on to, but rather just like a whole slew of theories that are swirling in your head that, in true American Horror Story fashion, anything we come up with right now is probably not going to be the case down the line.
Probably true.
So it's like anything that sounds smart right now, you could just forget about it because it's not going to happen. The other question I have for you, and I'm curious your take on this, is so we know that the rich people are there to essentially fund the creation of the outpost. So that's one thing.
$100 million a ticket.
I'm looking at Venable and Miriam Mead, Kathy Bates' character, almost as like the collective minions, the people that are in charge of keeping the whole place running. But then we have people like Timmy and Emily, played by Ash Santos. What is their purpose in your mind? Why does their ideal genetic makeup, how is that going to serve the collective's goal?
I was wondering that a lot. What makes ideal DNA? I don't think I have a hard theory on this yet, because it obviously works in the context of, if you want the simplest answer to rebuild the world, you want literally ideal DNA, and maybe they have the least what do they call that when something runs in your family? Genetic. Jeez. Big brain on this one. Like the least genetic problems and stuff like that. But part of me thinks it's probably more Satan-y.
Yeah. The only thing that I came up with that I somewhat think has a chance of being true, which means it's never going to happen, is that maybe there's something about their genetic makeup that if they got with someone or were raped by someone like the ghosty Tate Langdon, that there'd be more Satan babies in the future. That's the only thing that I was able to come up with, because they also make a really big deal of not letting the two of them get together while they're staying there.
So I wasn't sure if that... I guess what we don't know is how many of the rules, if any, are real and how many were just imposed because they're a pair of nasty bitches. Like, was that just because they like torturing people and the only thing you have to do in a bunker is basically like slam each other and they took that away? I don't know.
I mean, that's another reason why just like the onslaught of theories now is insanely frustrating. It's like, I get that's the fun of American Horror Story to an extent, and they always really play into that, but I needed a little more of a foundation in this episode before looking forward and feeling satisfied with where we are right now and the possibilities that lie ahead. And right now, I mean, really, right now, the fact that even though I love the two of them together and I like the idea of the two of them being sinister together, Sarah Paulson and Kathy Bates completely eliminate any structure that the Outpost and the Collective have now given us. Yeah. Because you said it perfectly. I mean, what is them and what is the Collective?
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, I will say that like the no copulation rule actually does make sense if you're running on limited supplies. Exactly, you don't want people having kids or catching diseases or anything like that.
The other question I have is, are there really limited supplies, or are they also just messing with the guests by giving them itty-bitty cubes that get smaller and smaller?
When she was like, we have to go to half rations, I was like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
That I definitely felt like was her just being nasty.
Probably. And it is super sick and twisted that she gets a kick out of it, but every American Horror Story season needs a character like that. the other big burning question I have right now is this season is supposed to incorporate elements of Murder House and Coven.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not the case, but obviously Michael Langdon is there. We know he is one of the connections, but how are we going to get connections that go beyond him to Murder House that incorporate some of the other characters from that season? And where are the Coven witches going to come into play? Or where do you suspect?
Well, so one question, did it say the year at the start of the episode?
It did not, as far as I know.
Okay, because like we know that like the Satan baby was growing quickly in Vivian Harmon's body, but did he continue to grow quickly as a human? Like, is Constance Langdon possibly still alive, or would she have passed away from age or baby murder? Because last time we saw him, he was killing his nanny. I have a lot of questions.
So where my mind went during the episode is, and I already think I've proven this theory false because having gone through some of the promos, I mean, that's another thing, is I'm obsessed with going frame by frame in those the trailers and the episode previews. But what I thought is that everything that's happening in this season is the now, and we would only get the old Murder House and Coven characters in flashback, and there's something about what they're doing and what they're up to in the past that has then led to either the creation of the collective or this present apocalypse.
I could see that, but from the preview, doesn't it look like they're in the...
Okay, so then this is what messed that up after I put it out there was there's a shot of what is it, Frances Conroy, Sarah Paulson, and Emma Roberts as they step into a building. You don't necessarily know if that is the outpost, but then there's this overhead shot that I found, and it comes in and out in a split second where it's the three of them standing, and I think it's Leslie Grossman, Adina Porter, and Billy Lord laying on the floor. I mean, you know, there's a lot of misdirection in these seasons. So for all I know, it could be some sort of flashy cut or a vision or something like that.
I was going to say it could be a vision. It could be like the witches projecting into the future.
You
Who
never
knows
know.
what they're
or
capable
using their bodies as vessels in a way.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that. I mean, especially with that kind of visual, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, with them laying on the floor.
I like that theory.
You know,
I just
my
made
theory
up.
is back in play here, but that's kind of where my mind went, and also because we know that American Horror Story is something that likes to do the "ha-ha, I gotcha" moment, you know, where it was all a dream or something like that.
So my thing is we've never seen anything, at least that I can remember, from those three witches that would point them in the direction of wanting to end the world.
Yes.
The remaining characters from Murder House, totes. Which I'm so excited to see the Harmons again. Oh, this was another crazy theory I had that's probably not true at all. What if Outpost 3 is built under the Murder House, and that's how the ghosts come back?
I've heard that one, and that does, I like that one. Oh, there was another one about Outpost 3 that I read that I was like, and it was good, and now, of course, I can't remember it. But not necessarily that the Coven witches were like, hoo-hoo, I want to, make the apocalypse happen and kill everyone, but more so their actions in something else. Like doing something witchy elsewhere has kind of paved the way to it.
Yeah, totally.
Kind of like that. I mean, kind of like, obviously... the existence of none of the good characters in Murder House intended to create Michael Langdon and bring him into the world, kind of like going back and exploring that and how their actions have then led to what's happening now.
I guess the whole thing in Murder House was that this family was manipulated at every turn by forces beyond their control. Yeah.
Which is what I suspect might be happening here too, in a way. I mean, really, every single character in Outpost 3 is being manipulated to the ultimate extent.
Absolutely. I hope they pick up the pace with a couple answers here, because it's fun to play the question game to a point.
So to come back at that, though, what value do any answers in American Horror Story have in episode 2?
So true. But I would say to give me something to hang on to.
Yeah.
Because right now I'm just flailing.
Uh-huh.
And even if it's not the real answer, give me something to hold on to.
This is the frustrating thing about the show. I adore the show. I am a huge American Horror Story fan. I will never stop watching, never stop enjoying. But every single time I talk about it, I mean, just... I sound frustrated because I am frustrated.
It's a
also,
very frustrating show.
I can't wait until the next episode. It's just the inability to actually figure out what's going on, and also after so many seasons, knowing that anytime I get any kind of concrete information, that information ultimately will likely be proven false.
Right.
Makes it an incredibly frustrating show to watch and really engage with.
So I guess, like, take either Murder House or Cult, and you can look at the first episode and say, I don't know what's going on. But you can also look at the characters in the first episode, and you care about them, or a couple of them, and you also get a good sense of who they really are from the get-go. I mean, there are some tricky ones, like Tate was obviously meant to break your heart, so he was presented differently than he really is. But overall, you're introduced to a set of characters that live within their own rules for the rest of the season, even if the mystical elements or the crazy elements, the rules will bend along the way.
That is true.
I don't feel like I've got that. I don't have a sense of who these people are. I don't feel grounded in them, and like I can ride with them through a crazy journey because I don't know. I have nothing to hold on to.
I'm curious to see if they wind up just sitting in the outline that was presented in episode 1, where Coco and that whole band is strictly material and vanity all the way through, and just self gain, and then you have Timmy and Emily, and they'll always be our straight men, so to speak, and just be fighting for good. And I imagine it's going to wind up being Michael Langdon versus Venable and Meade.
Interesting.
That's like the broadest structure that I could formulate right now.
Yeah. Again, though, that doesn't give me anyone to care about.
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
that's the problem, is that like that is the surface most layer, and episode 1 doesn't give you anything beyond that.
So I feel like with Cult, this is a good example. Leslie Grossman's character in that season I thought was one of the best executed. Surprised me a lot. She starts out very similar to the character she plays right now, like this totally shallow, like kind of doofy, not as rich and not as fashionable, but she never abandons that part of herself throughout the season, but she is given a lot of layers that make her more interesting. She, kind of spoiler, but like she's really looking for love. Like that's what she wants, and that's how she lands in this cult. And she ends up easy to care about. My hope is that they'll do that with some of these characters who don't work for me right now, is that over the course of time you'll be like, well, they're boring, but they got a good heart. Like, I guess I relate to that. Or
I get that. I get that.
She's a really silly rich girl who can't do anything for herself, but she has some core factor that makes her more interesting than that, you know?
In describing this right now, I think part of the problem is that like the structure and the themes of Cult were strong enough right at the beginning to give you a little more guidance than the theme of Apocalypse is. You know, where it's like right at the onset with Cult, you can look at someone and kind of see their vulnerabilities and why they might be drawn to that thing, that cult, that almost that source of comfort that isn't really a source of comfort. But then when it comes to Apocalypse, it's like the only thing you really have is, in the case of like a major like cinematic disaster, it is strictly the desire to survive.
Right.
And I don't think we've necessarily paired that particularly well here with the whether you want to call it witchy, whatever kind of supernatural thing is going on. I don't think the two things are melding well together right now.
Not yet, no.
Which means I have absolutely no firm footing whatsoever.
You know what, you saying that just made me, reminded me that I've been thinking about this since the episode came on the air, and I did want to talk about it. Are apocalypse narratives even that interesting right now? We did so many of them in the early 2000s at like such a rapid fire pace. it feels a little out of date to me, or almost like the beginning where I was like, this feels like 5 years ago in LA. This feels like a story for 5 years ago.
Feels like a 90s disaster flick.
Kind of. I'm not sure. I mean, they are relevant. Obviously, there's a lot of fear about nuclear war right now that they were tapping into with the, like, it's like Hawaii thing.
Yeah.
But they just feel a little passé to me right now, and especially if it ends up being a zombie apocalypse. Like, ooh, that's so early 2000s.
That goes right back to my main criticism of the episode. It feels that way because it feels so detached from the second half of the episode. Or not even second half. I mean, that's probably 2/3 of the episode. But the beginning,
Yeah.
the 90s disaster style piece, feels so detached from the, very familiar Gothic American horror story portion of it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I drew enough connections in episode 1 to really care.
No.
But the curiosity is
I
there.
need episode 2 to come through for me, because, like, if the Coven Murder House crossover ends up being my least favorite season, I will be devastated.
I'll be pretty bummed too. I mean, I don't really think I can't think of any other crossovers, or the only other one I could think of is when Queenie popped up in Hotel, and that was immensely disappointing.
Wasn't there some kind of...
There's definitely something else that's not coming to my mind right now.
I think there was one in Freak Show that was not as direct as this, but I do think I could be wrong, but I believe I remember at that time period them being like, well, this is a wink to another season.
Yeah. I think I think you are right about Freak Show.
It's been so long since I've seen it.
I was going to say, it's going to bother me now that I can't think about it, but there is absolutely no hope with me recalling that right now.
No.
But I am going to be really disappointed if we've been setting this up as some sort of season mashup, and then it kind of doesn't make due on that promise, or make due on it in a satisfying way that also doesn't hurt the experience of then going back and rewatching Murder House or Coven.
That's my big worry.
That's the problem you run into with pretty much any kind of sequel attempt out there. I mean, really any standard TV show that isn't an anthology and has a season 2. When season 2 is extremely disappointing, then you go back to season 1 and you still have that negative vibe or flavor from season 2.
Well, so I know we both felt that. I always say I have no problem with remakes, and I don't, because remakes don't affect the original thing. But I know we both felt this way when the second Independence Day movie came out.
Yeah.
We're like, you just kind of literally ruined the first one.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely, I don't watch it anymore, and I used to watch it every year.
I still watch it. I watch it less than I did, but I still watch it. But yeah, in that case, that was also very specific things happening to characters from the first movie.
Well, that's what I worry about. They're going to do things to characters here that make me not like them in retrospect, or things like that.
See, this is why I love my theory, where they're only involved in past flashbacks, and they don't know that what they're doing is going to lead to what's happening now.
We'll see. I just remembered another crossover, though. Lana Winters was in Roanoke.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. There's definitely a bigger one in Freak Show, though, in particular.
I think so, right?
Because I feel like I remember covering that when it was first announced or something.
And so, what's interesting is that at a certain point, all these little tiny connections and character crossovers suggest that this whole universe is ultimately connected. And so there are witches and vampires all existing in the same world, where this apocalypse has now happened to everyone, presumably, under this whole umbrella of the American Horror Story world.
Do you know what one of the other theories that I read was that that would make me extremely angry if this winds up being the case? Is that it's all a ruse. That somehow I don't think it's possible, but some are saying that they were all ushered into Outpost 3, and if they ever got out, they would realize that it's just business as usual.
So, I hope that's not true, because
I hope that's not true too. I don't think it's possible, though.
I really don't know how you fake a nuclear apocalypse, but Ryan Murphy has said that this show hinges on an enormous twist in episode 5, which might be why people are speculating that. That inherently makes me nervous, because it feels like...
You said that, what's that meme with the dog, and it's got like that face? Like, you know what I'm talking about? Damn, I gotta find it now. But I feel like that's what I did.
Like a grumpy dog?
kind of. Or it's like throw your arms up, like something like that. Shit. I don't know my memes.
Find it and tweet it when we post this episode, so we know what
really
it means. So the other reason I really, really don't want that to be true is if this whole season, or if 5 episodes of this season are confined in Outpost 3, I think I will not like it. Like, I don't want 5 episodes to be stuck in that outpost with these people I don't care about in this setting I find kind of visually boring, and these outfits that we both hate.
I don't think I would have that same feeling if they had taken more time to pave the way into Outpost 3.
Yeah, maybe.
I think that's, if in my ideal world, episode 1 of American Horror Story Apocalypse would have spent more time with the characters right after the sirens went off, and spent a little more time and gave them a little more breathing room, especially Timmy with that moment with his family.
It was a good moment.
It was a great moment.
And hey, Dina Meyer, I've missed you.
He was just yanked away from his family.
Yeah.
When everybody was under the impression that they were all going to be obliterated within seconds, and we never see him process that. Not for a minute.
Yeah.
Not for a minute after it happens does he ever think about his family.
I did think, though, you're right, he never really does.
No.
But that was another piece of...
By the way, this is the meme.
All right, then. Yeah.
I think some people will be able to see it in the video, but I don't know what that meme is actually called.
I don't know either.
That face, I've made it a couple of times in this episode.
Another moment of the sort of goofy, like, terrible humor that I really liked was they were celebrating him getting a full ride to college, and then these people showed up and they're like, "You've been accepted to the apocalyptic bunker."
Oh, man, there's so many questions. So many questions. I mean, I don't know. This show just has my mind spinning out of control. I mean, really, being an American Horror Story fan is freaking exhausting. It's exhausting. And sometimes it's like a thankless fandom to be a part of, but I'm addicted. I can't get out of it. And even though, like, I feel like I came across as being really negative about this episode overall, but like, there's this inexplicable draw I have to this show no matter what. This season, any season for that matter, no matter how many times it feels like the show gave me a big fat middle finger for being so invested, I can't not want to watch next week's episode.
So why... Okay, I have a theory, but why do you think that is?
I think it's a combination of the initial draw and success of the show, paired with my draw to the genre. I think it's the anthology format.
Love that.
And the marketing campaign, which I hate.
You hate it? But it's so effective.
I don't hate it as much. The time that and I don't like using the H word very often, but the time where the marketing campaign made me truly hate it and made me angry was leading up to Roanoke.
Yeah, that was infuriating.
Where it was like,
I think there's a reason they did that once.
Never do that ever again. But, you know, and I'm not even just talking about the marketing campaign leading up to individual seasons. I'm talking about, you know, the way that they tease the next episode too. I mean, it's just this constant delivering of curious ideas that have no conclusion in each episode, and it basically forces you to jump from one to the next and always wonder whether you like it or not. It constantly keeps you wondering.
Right.
And it's this insatiable desire I have to always have answers to.
But you seem to have affection for the show, and you do not have affection for that strategy, so I don't think that's what makes you like it. I mean, the anthology thing and the horror thing I totally buy. That seems to me like it's like what keeps you hooked on it.
Yeah.
I know. For me, I think as infuriating as the plots and the lack of payoff can be, what Murphy and his team do well in their writing that keeps me coming back is they consistently give these actors incredible roles.
That's true.
That they don't otherwise. Like, I thought Evan Peters' performance last year in Cult was unbelievable.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
And, you know, they always give them these characters that they can really sink their teeth into and kind of go crazy with. And I love watching the actors chew that shit up. But I just wish that their character work would match their storytelling ability.
It's a really interesting question you pose, because I'm surprised I've never really thought about it.
Yeah.
Like, I've only thought about it in the broadest terms. I guess another thing that keeps me coming back for more is the creativity and the risk taking. I mean, again, I'll use the frustrating word. As frustrating as it is, like the boldness with which they tackle the most extreme things, it's something that constantly keeps me guessing. And I guess part of the reason I'm hooked too is that quality of never knowing where they could possibly go next.
Yeah, that does get you.
I think I'm a little addicted to the surprise and the shock of it all.
Just why can't the surprises be good?
Well, who knows? It's episode 1.
Yeah,
Hopefully they'll crush it with the next episode, and we'll have a little more to chew on the next time we get to talk about American Horror Story Apocalypse with you guys. But yeah, I think that about wraps it up for this episode of The Witching Hour. Haleigh, where can everybody find you all over the web?
All over the internet. You can find me on Collider.com. You can find me on Twitter at Haleigh Fouch. You can find me on Instagram at Haystack McGroovy. And if you do want to know more of my thoughts on the episode, I do have a full review, spoiler review, posted on Collider.
And I believe I have the timing of this right, but you should definitely follow Haleigh on Twitter right now, because she's off to Fantastic Fest soon.
Yeah, on Thursday it begins.
So if you want immediate coverage of the festival, that's where you get it. You can catch me on Twitter and Instagram at PNemroff. I did cover a bunch of the Midnight Madness lineup at TIFF, so if you want to see those reviews, they are on Collider.com. Most of them are written. There's also some on Collider Quick and the main Collider YouTube channel as well, so
you were busy
check
as
that
hell,
out.
girl.
Oh boy, I did not stop, and I did not want to, but I'm back, home base, with Haleigh on The Witching Hour. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. Now, it's official. You've survived The Witching Hour.